This Headless Professor video is about Google Sheets, why use them and how to use them. I'm T.L. Brink from Crafton Hills College of the San Bernardino Community College District. There are 5 basic reasons for using Google Sheets with your statistical data. It helps students master the conceptual basis for the numerical coding of data. This file on Google Sheets then serves as a permanent repository of the data. And that data would be shareable. You can share it with other students working on the same project or with the professors who are mentoring your data collection. And you can both be looking at the same file if you're in the same room or even if you are working remotely. Another advantage is that Google Sheets, like Excel, can be used to error check some of our data entry. And finally, we can use Google Sheets or Excel to help us prepare the data for statistical analysis in a program such as JASP. What I'm going to do now is take a look at an example of the use of Google Sheets. Let's suppose that I have a student who is working on a questionnaire. And the questionnaire has questions about the participant's sex, age, general mental health, social class, political orientation, religiosity, stress level, the frequency of depression, and attitudes about President Biden. Now, the important thing in using a spreadsheet like Excel or Google Sheets is to master the concept of rows and columns. Each column represents data from a different case, and the rule is 1 row per case, 1 case per row. Each column represents a different variable. 1 variable per column, 1 column per variable. And what I'm going to enter in each particular cell, for example, I'm currently in cell 11B, is I'm going to enter the score of that particular subject for that particular variable. Subject 11, variable column B. Notice that I have used my first row to define the variable that is in that particular column. And I've used my next few rows to present kind of a code book where I describe how I'm doing my numerical coding. Now, in this particular example, I'm getting data to put into a correlation matrix. So the data I'm looking at is going to be entirely numerical. If I were using some other kinds of statistics, such as an analysis of variance or a chi-squared, it would be okay to have some of these variables be purely categorical. But all of this is going to go into a correlation matrix of Pearson coefficients, and so therefore I want to code everything numerically. I'm going to begin coding my first subject in row 11. If I had 50 subjects in my sample, my first subject would be in row 11, my last subject would be in row 60. Let's suppose my first subject is a male, and so I'm going to put a 1 there to indicate male. If it was a female, I would put a 0. If the variable was called female instead of male, I would put 1 for the female and 0 for the male. It's very important that the name of each variable indicate what a high score would indicate. Now, my second column is the variable of age. Let's suppose that this individual is 22 years old, so I'd put a 2 there. The next variable is self-rating of mental health, and the better the mental health, the higher the score. Let's suppose this person says his mental health is good, so we'll give him 3 points. He describes his social class as working class. That was the class of his parents growing up. So let's see. Working class is equal to 2 points. So that's what I'll put. He describes his political orientation as conservative. Well, far right would be 5. Conservative would be 4. So we're going to give him 4 points for that column. He describes himself as very religious. So we'll give him 3 points there. What is his current stress level on a scale of 0 to 10? He says it's only 6. That's what we'll put up here. How often does he get depressed? Well, the more depressed he gets, the higher the score. He says he gets depressed almost never. So we give him 2 points for that. Now the next 2 questions deal with his attitude toward President Biden. Does he agree that President Biden is doing a good job? Now we measure this on a Likert scale that has 5 levels. Strongly agree, mostly agree, not sure, mostly disagree, strongly disagree, and he's not sure, so we'll give him 3 points. The next question is, how likely is he to vote for President Biden for a re-election in 2024? And he says, somewhat unlikely. He's hoping a better candidate will emerge. So we'll give him 2 points for that. Now let's suppose our next candidate is a young woman under age 20, and her mental health is fair. Her social class growing up was financially secure. Politically, she's a moderate. Religiously, she's not very religious. Her stress level is an 8. She gets depressed often, so that's a 4. In terms of her approval of President Biden, it's 2. Mostly disagree. How likely is she to vote for him for re-election? We'll say very unlikely. And then we would look at our next subject and put some information in for this particular individual. And we would just continue going on like this. Now, our next thing, before we analyze our data statistically, would be to do an error check. And so after we've entered our last subject, we go down and create a couple other rows for maximum and minimum. So we go here in column B, and we click on the functions, and we click on max. And then we select the actual cells that we want to include in this calculation, all the cells that have real data. And then we do the same thing for the minimum. We select all the cells in this column that we're going to include. And then we select those two max and min cells. Notice how the little cursor changes to a cross. We hold and drag this across for every variable, and it shows the max and min for every variable. And I said this is very useful because it's an error checker. And here's the way we do that. We look for any number that is outside of the theoretical range we initially established up here in our coding. So we said males would get 1, females will get a 0. If we have anything other than 0 and 1 here, we know we've miscoded somebody. That looks okay. We look at age, and the theoretical range is from 1 to 5. we have an actual range of 1 to 2. That's okay to be within that range. What that means is we didn't have anybody who was in the 30s, 40s, or 50s. Let's look at our mental health. At a theoretical range of 1 to 4, we recorded 1 to 3. Social class, that's within the range. Political orientation, that's within the range. But now we get to religiosity. And the fact that somebody was scored with a 0, that's an error in data entry. Nobody can get a 0 using the coding system we started off with, 1 to 3. So we're going to go back to our third subject and see, what did that person really say? Not very religious. Well, we should have put a 1 and not a 0. Let's go on to the next thing. Stress levels, are those within the range? Yes. What about depression? Oh, somebody got a 6. That's outside the range. That is an error in data entry. Let's go back to our third subject again. How depressed is this person? Oh, often. So that person should have got a 4, not a 6. It's impossible to get a 6 there. And the last two variables are within their range. So we succeeded in checking our data here. The last thing we're going to do is we are going to clean up these data for putting it into our program. And here's the way we're going to do that. We're going to make a copy. And I'm going to take these data and make them into a copy that I can feed in to the JASP program. So everything you see me do now in terms of editing, this is being done on the copy, not the original data sheet, which is being saved in its form. I'm going to have to get rid of all the extra rows that do not contain a title or data. So all of my coding instructions we're going to erase because the statistical program doesn't need those. So we're going to delete those rows. We're also going to delete any calculations we have below, like for maximum and minimum, because we don't need those either. So now we just have the top row, which names our variable, and the actual data entries. Let's also get rid of column A, because that contains no data, it just contains instructions. Now I'm going to save this. Automatically it's saved in Google Sheets. And this is the file, the CSV file that I download, that I will upload into a statistical program, JASP. These data are cleaned up and ready to go. That's how you use Google Sheets.